Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're digging deep into a truly foundational guide, Barbara Damrosch's The Garden Primer. Specifically, we're extracting the absolute goals from Chapter 1, which, let me tell you, it's less about memorizing instructions. It's more about understanding the living, breathing essence of gardening. Our mission, to give you a real shortcut to being well-informed about growing things, whether you're, a college student with a windowsill herb garden or dreaming of a full backyard plot. We want to go beyond the how-to and really uncover the why, truly understanding how plants work and connecting it all to sustainable living.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating is how Damrosch invites you to think like a plant. She makes it really clear that true gardening wisdom comes from observing a plant's inherent needs. It's almost like learning its unique sign language, that subtle lean, that droop. It's all communication. It gives you this profound respect for their intelligence and, well, their sheer will to thrive. I'm reminded of her story about the South American jungle. Paths cut through it. They'd apparently be sealing up again in just a week. It's just a powerful illustration of nature's relentless, surprising resilience.
They truly are incredible survivors.
Right.
And to really think like a plant, we need to start with their fundamental needs, right?
Right.
For survival, growth, reproduction. At their core, plants are just amazing food factories. They perform this magic through photosynthesis. It's a complex process powered by sunlight. Essentially, they breathe in reverse of us, inhaling carbon dioxide, exhaling oxygen, and absorbing essential elements from the air, water, and the soil.
Exactly. And from the soil, they're primarily seeking what we often call the big three, compounds of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's the NPK you see on fertilizer bags. Plus, there's a crucial supporting cast, elements like sulfur, calcium, magnesium, and then tiny amounts of trace minerals. But plants aren't just passive receivers. They have these built-in desires or tropisms. Think of phototropism, that innate drive to lean towards the light, always seeking the sun. Or hydrotropism, their roots actively, growing towards water sources. It's like they have their own internal GPS system.
So understanding a plant's basic structure is really key to meeting those needs, isn't it? Especially like what's happening beneath the surface.
Absolutely. The roots are kind of the unsung heroes. They're the plant's anchor, sure,
Yeah.
but also its primary absorption system. They draw up water, oxygen, and nutrients through these microscopic root hairs.
Oh, right, the tiny hairs.
Yeah, exactly. And roots are also vital storage units, like in bulbs or tubers. Then, above ground, the stems provide essential support, always reaching up to get leaves into the light and air. They're the plant's circulatory system, basically a two-way highway moving raw materials up and manufactured food down. And then you've got the leaves. These are the plant's solar panels, packed with chlorophyll. They take in CO2 through tiny pores called stomata, combine it with water and nutrients, powered by sunlight, to produce carbohydrates, the plant's food. So simply put, more healthy leaves means more food and more vigorous growth.
And speaking of growth, where does a plant put on its most, dramatic show?
You might not always see it directly, but the most active growth points are right at the tips of the roots and the terminal buds. Those are the buds at the very tips of the stems. New stems also emerge from side buds, constantly expanding the plant's reach. And plants have different life cycles, too. You've got annuals like marigolds, which do everything seed to flower to seed and die in one season. Then there are perennials, like asters, that persist year after year, growing and reproducing over multiple seasons. As gardeners, our goal is just to maintain robust growth throughout a plant's natural life, encouraging it to thrive.
And all that vigorous growth eventually leads to reproduction, which, when you really look closely, is truly a marvel of nature.
It really is. The whole purpose of a flower, from the plant's point of view, is reproduction. Their vibrant colors, their fragrances, it's all designed to attract pollinators. We usually think of bees and butterflies, but the cast is much broader. Moths, hummingbirds, even bats and possums get involved. As these creatures move around collecting nectar, they're inadvertently transferring pollen, fertilizing the flower, which then leads to the fruits or seed heads that we might harvest. Seeds are then spread in all sorts of clever ways: gravity, wind, water, animals. Plus, plants can reproduce vegetatively too, sending up new shoots from roots or underground stems. As gardeners, we sometimes step in, sort of subtly changing plants' minds by, say, removing suckers or cutting off spent seed heads. This just directs the plant's energy into developing bigger fruits, or maybe more flowers, or even stronger root systems instead of maturing seeds.
Okay, now let's talk about the absolute foundation of all this life and growth, the soil. So much of what a plant needs comes directly from it. think a lot of people, just grab plant food off the shelf thinking it's like buying dog food or something. But Damrosch really emphasizes that truly good soil needs both structure and fertility. And that structure is something you have to actively build.
That's such a critical distinction. Soil isn't just, well, dirt. It's a dynamic mix of inorganic mineral particles, air, water, and that incredibly vital organic matter, which is just dead plant and animal tissue. If you dig down a bit, you'll usually see the darker, looser topsoil that's richer in organic matter and living organisms. Below that is the denser subsoil, which is still important, especially for deep roots and accessing minerals. Soil texture, now that's all about particle size, from coarse sand right down to fine clay. Sandy soils have larger particles, meaning they drain quickly, they're oxygen-rich, they warm up fast. Great for roots in some ways.
But they lose water and nutrients too fast.
Exactly. Clay soils, with their tiny particles, are dense. They hold water and nutrients incredibly well. But the downside is they can easily become waterlogged, lacking oxygen, making it tough for roots to penetrate. The happy medium for most plants is loam, that nice, balanced blend.
So how can folks listening get a sense of their own soil type without, sending it off to a lab?
Right. There's a simple little test you can try. On a day when the soil isn't super dry or soaking wet, just grab a handful and squeeze. If it forms a tight, sticky ball that doesn't break apart easily, you're likely looking at clay. If it just crumbles right through your fingers, that's sandy. But if it holds together in a ball but then breaks apart pretty easily when you tap it, well, you've probably got that ideal loam. And this ties into soil structure, or tilth, how those particles actually clump together. Good soil has a crumb, like loose breadcrumbs. It feels light, almost fluffy, it's easy to dig, and it's incredibly inviting for plant roots and earthworms.
Okay, so if your soil isn't this perfect, crumbly loam, what's the single most transformative thing you can possibly do?
Yeah, don't despair. Damrosch is really clear on this. There's one easy way to improve your soil no matter what is wrong with its structure. Add organic matter. And this is where it gets really interesting. Organic matter, again, just dead plant or animal tissue, decomposes with help from bacteria and fungi and turns into humus. This humus contains these sticky gums that bind soil particles together into those vital crumbs, creating spaces for air and water.
So it creates little air pockets.
Exactly. This aerates heavy clay, letting excess water drain away, and it helps sandy soils hold on to precious moisture. It's not just about feeding the plants directly, it's literally fitting the soil itself.
Wow, it sounds like it's the ultimate multitasker for the garden then.
It absolutely is. Organic matter also helps moderate soil temperature, and as it breaks down, it slowly releases vital nutrients that plants can actually absorb. I really can't stress this enough. The soil is a remarkably busy place. It's just teeming with microscopic life. Millions of bacteria in a single teaspoon. Plus fungi, nematodes, worms. This whole intricate web of life is essential. Without these organisms, nothing would decompose properly, and plants wouldn't get the nutrients they need in a usable form. So as gardeners, our respect for this living system is paramount. Compacting the soil, over-tilling, using harsh chemicals, all that disrupts this delicate balance. Nurturing this living soil lets it do a lot of the work for you, fostering a self-sustaining system instead of one that's, dependent on constant artificial inputs.
Let's just quickly zoom in on those critical nutrients again. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the NPK. How do they each contribute?
Right. So nitrogen, N, gives plants that vibrant green color and fuels vigorous leaf and stem growth. Think of it as a quick energy boost. But too much can lead to soft, weak growth that's more vulnerable. Phosphorus, P, is crucial for strong root development and also for fruit and seed production, plus disease resistance. It's especially good for root veggies and new transplants. And potassium, K, is vital for overall plant health and resilience against disease. While deficiencies in those trace elements are harder to spot, a professional soil test is really the best way to know your precise nutrient needs and also your soil pH levels. That helps you amend your soil effectively without guessing.
Okay, so if adding organic matter is kind of the universal solution, what are some practical organic ways to actually do that?
Well, first off, organic matter is always decomposing, so it needs regular replenishment. Animal manures are fantastic, great for soil structure and nutrients, especially nitrogen. But, and this is crucial, only use well-rotted manure. It should be odorless and look like dark soil. Fresh manure is too hot, too caustic, it can literally burn plant roots.
Okay, good tip. What about plant-based stuff?
Yeah, excellent options there too. Peat moss lightens soil effectively, but it's actually pretty low in nutrients. Grass clippings are convenient, but definitely avoid using them if they've been treated with broadleaf weed killers. That's important. And for larger gardens, you might consider cover crops or green manures. These are plants sown specifically just to improve the soil. Legumes, like clovers or vetch, are particularly good because they fix nitrogen from the air, enriching the soil for whatever you plant next.
And then there's the ultimate DIY soil amendment, compost. Everyone talks about
Yeah,
compost.
absolutely. Making compost is basically nature's recycling program right in your backyard. You turn garden debris and kitchen scraps into this free, fantastic soil amendment. Think of it like building a big casserole of organic matter. You layer browns, carbon-rich stuff like twigs, dry leaves, straw with greens, nitrogen-rich stuff like kitchen scraps, fresh grass clippings, green plant debris. You might mix in thin layers of soil too. It needs moisture, warmth, and air to cook, and the pile can get quite hot inside.
Does turning it actually help?
Oh yeah, turning the pile definitely speeds up decomposition. It aerates it and brings the cooler outside material into the hot center. The key is really a diverse mix of ingredients for balanced nutrition. When it's done, you get this dark, crumbly, earthy-smelling material that's just gold for your garden.
So beyond this general organic matter, when might you need more specific nutrients? And what's the thinking behind organic versus, say, inorganic fertilizers?
Right. Well, if a soil test shows specific deficiencies, or maybe for certain demanding plants or specific growth stages, you might need to fertilize. The question to ask is, what kind of food does this particular plant really want? Now, inorganic or chemical fertilizers offer precise nutrient percentages. That's true. But Damrosch and most organic gardeners really prefer natural sources, things derived from animal and vegetable matter. Chemical fertilizers can actually harm beneficial soil organisms, leading to dependency. They can cause residue buildup, even contaminate groundwater if overused. Organic fertilizers like well-rotted manure, bone meal, rock phosphate, or wood ashes, they contribute to the entire soil ecosystem. They offer this kind of greater than the sum of its parts benefit. And for adjusting soil pH specifically, lime raises pH in acidic soil, while pelleted sulfur or acidic organic matter like peat moss lowers it in alkaline soil. But again, always rely on that soiling test for precise recommendations. Don't guess.
Okay, so once your soil is understood and you've maybe added amendments, we need to physically prepare the bed. Let's talk about tilling. What's the main purpose here?
Tilling basically serves to work those amendments into the soil thoroughly. It loosens the soil, breaks up clumps, usually down to a depth of about 6 inches or so. If you're starting a completely new bed, you'll first need to remove the existing sod grass and roots. Then you dig in your amendments, like compost or lime, using a spade or a digging fork. Rototillers can be easier on the back for sure, but you need to be cautious. They can sometimes lead to sod and weed regrowth if you're not careful, and repeated use, especially at the same depth, can pulverize soil structure or even create a hard pan layer underneath.
When's the best time to do this tilling?
Generally, fall is the best time to till a new bed. It allows the soil to settle over winter, prevents air pockets, and lets those amendments start integrating and the soil organisms begin their work. For established beds, especially perennial gardens, you actually don't need to till very often, if at all. Annual beds might get tilled yearly, again, ideally in the fall when the soil isn't too wet. Over-tilling really can be detrimental, but a light forking in the fall, sometimes called frost tillage, is highly effective. It exposes soil clumps to winter's freezing and thawing, which creates a beautifully crumbly soil structure by spring.
So we've laid the groundwork with soil. Now let's shine a light on another universal plant need. Light itself, it's their energy source, right?
Right.
What are the visual cues a plant gives you if it's getting too little or maybe even too much?
That's a crucial one. While there are a few exceptions, full shade only supports true shade lovers, and deep shade, like under dense evergreens, supports almost nothing.
And trees lose their leaves, so that changes things too.
Exactly. Deciduous trees offer seasonal shade spring sun for early bloomers, then shade in the summer. Often you might need to make adjustments in your garden, like carefully pruning tree limbs for more sun, or maybe planting trees or building structures like lath screens for more shade.
Okay, next up is water. The plant's literal lifeblood. Every chemical reaction, nutrient movement, even a plant's firmness, its turgor, depends on water. What are the dramatic signs a plant is getting too little, or, maybe surprisingly, too much?
Yeah, too little water is obvious. Plants shrivel, they flop, they look limp. But too much is just as damaging, maybe even more insidious. It often leads to rotting roots because they can't get oxygen, soggy stems or crowns, and just makes plants much more susceptible to diseases. Achieving the right balance is really the key, and needs vary hugely. Depends on the plant species, think cacti versus bog plants, but also root depth, age, and growth stage. Young plants and recent transplants always need extra consistent water to get their roots established. And environmental factors matter too. Strong sun, heat, wind all increase water loss.
And how does our old friend soil type play into water management?
Big time. Sandy soils, as we said, hold water poorly. Clay soils hold it well, but often drain poorly. The good news, again, is that soils rich in organic matter greatly improve both scenarios. They hold moisture well, but also allow the excess to drain away. It's that buffering effect. If you have drainage problems, watch where water puddles after a good rain. For steep slopes, terracing or planting soil-retaining plants can help slow runoff. For poor drainage in flat areas, you might need to create subtle berms to channel water, or maybe install simple drainage gullies. Raised beds are often a fantastic simple solution for smaller plants in soggy spots. As for actual watering practices, the general rule of thumb for established gardens is about an inch of rain per week is sufficient. But of course this varies. Mulched gardens or those with clay soil might need less. Raised beds, containers, or sandy soils often need more. It's absolutely vital to water new plants deeply and consistently until they're established. When you do water, the goal is to water deeply enough to make the moisture meet, so the surface water connects with the deeper moisture in the soil. A light sprinkle doesn't do much good. And crucially, try to water the soil, not the leaves. This avoids potential sun scorch from water droplets acting like lenses, and more importantly, it helps prevent fungal diseases, which thrive on wet foliage, especially overnight. And always try to conserve water. Choose plants suited to your climate, prevent runoff water efficiently.
Now that we've covered the basic needs, soil, light, water, let's talk about giving plants a truly good start and how climate fits in. Here's where it gets really interesting, because Damrosch compares plant adaptability to, like, human personality, emphasizing that early conditions are just crucial. She takes this sort of Freudian approach to plants, believing that whether you plant a tiny seed or a big tree, a wonderful nurturing environment sets it up for success later on.
And that really rings true when you think about adapting plants to different climates, too. Gardeners often go to great lengths to grow plants that aren't perfectly suited to their climate, like, say, growing dahlias in cold regions where you have to dig them up each fall. This usually involves providing extra care, maybe creating microclimates or giving them artificial winters. The USDA Winter Hardiness Zone map is a widely used tool for this. It divides regions based on average minimum winter temperatures, helping you choose plants likely to survive your local winters. But remember, it's just a broad estimate. It doesn't account for unique microclimates right in your own yard, like a protected south-facing wall versus a windy hilltop, or other critical factors like maximum heat, humidity, dryness, or specific soil conditions. So it's a guide, not a guarantee.
Okay, so if we want to give our plants that very best start, what's the magic in growing from seed? It sounds really rewarding.
Oh, there's definitely something profoundly satisfying about nurturing a plant right from a single seed. Starting seeds indoors lets you get a jump on the growing season, especially for plants that are sensitive to frost, and it gives you a controlled environment. You'll want to use a sterile, soilless mix. You can buy it or make your own in containers with good drainage holes. Moisten the mix before you sow the seeds and label everything meticulously. Optimum temperature is really key for germination. Sometimes heat mats are helpful for consistent warmth. But the absolute moment those seeds sprout, they need an excellent light source. A sunny windowsill often isn't enough. Adjustable fluorescent lights or grow lights are much better to prevent seedlings from getting weak and leggy. Water carefully, usually from the bottom up so you don't dislodge tiny seedlings. Once they develop their second set of true leaves, you'll usually prick them out, carefully transplant them into slightly larger individual pots or cells, handling them gently by their leaves, not the fragile stems. A fantastic alternative Damrosch highly recommends are soil blocks. You use a special tool to create these sturdy little cubes of soil mix. Seedlings grown in these have amazing root systems and experience almost no transplant shock because there's no pot to remove.
Oh, interesting. No plastic pots needed.
Exactly. And finally, before they go permanently outdoors, you have to harden off your indoor-grown seedlings. This means gradually exposing them to outdoor conditions. Sun, wind, cooler temperatures over a week or two. A cold frame is ideal for this.
And what about transplanting those carefully nurtured seedlings outdoors? Or putting in larger, maybe nursery-grown plants or shrubs?
Right, so when planting seedlings outdoors, make sure the garden soil is nicely prepared first. Water the seedlings thoroughly before you take them out of their pots or blocks. This helps them slide out easily and reduces stress. If you're planting anything that was grown in a container, gently tease apart any circling or matted roots to encourage them to grow outwards into the new soil. Dig a hole, maybe fill it with water first to let it soak in, then set the plant at the same depth it was growing previously, or sometimes slightly deeper for leggy seedlings like tomatoes, and firm the soil gently around the roots. For planting larger shrubs and trees, the key is digging a hole that's wider than it is deep. This encourages the feeder roots, which spread outwards, to explore the surrounding soil. If you're planting bare root woody plants like roses or fruit trees sometimes, or you plant them when they're dormant, make sure the spot where the trunk meets the roots, you can usually see a slight color change, is just at or slightly above the soil line. Spread the roots out naturally in the hole, fill with soil, water deeply to settle everything, and then mulch, keeping the mulch a few inches away from the trunk itself. And the most critical aftercare for any newly planted shrub or tree is generous, consistent watering. We're talking several gallons, maybe daily for the first week or two, then weekly for the first season, especially in hot, dry weather. That's often the make or break factor.
Okay, every gardener knows that alongside all the joys of growing, there are also the unwelcome guests. Weeds, pests, diseases, and sometimes wildlife. As Damrosch's mother apparently said, a weed is just the right plant in the wrong place. They are definitely fierce competitors for resources.
They certainly are, and many weeds are just expert colonizers, thriving in disturbed ground. Interestingly, the types of weeds you have can sometimes tell you things about your soil conditions. Now, for annual weeds, the ones that grow, seed, and die in one season, they produce tons of seeds. So the golden rule is attack them when they're tiny. Slicing them off at the soil line with a sharp hoe or pulling them by hand, the key is catching them before they go to seed. Damrosch notes that consistent, diligent weeding for about 7 years can drastically reduce the seed bank in your soil. Perennial weeds are tougher. They often spread from persistent roots or underground stems, so just chopping the top off doesn't work. You really need to get the whole root system out. A digging fork is usually better than a spade because it's less likely to chop the roots into little pieces that can resprout. Mulching helps suppress annual weeds, definitely, but existing perennial weed roots will often just push right up through mulch. Physical garden edgings can also help deter weeds like grass from invading your beds.
And then there are the bugs. I like Damrosch's philosophy here, and it resonates with me too. It's about tolerance. A few chewed leaves are okay. It's one for the bugs, one for me. She really emphasizes that healthy plants are surprisingly resistant to pests and makes a strong case against toxic sprays, which are dangerous for us, pets, wildlife, and ultimately the whole garden ecosystem.
Absolutely, because every garden has this complex ecological balance. If you try to eliminate every bad insect, you often wipe out its natural predators too, or you harm essential pollinators like bees. The goal shouldn't be total eradication, but rather managing pest numbers to an acceptable level. Organic pest management starts with the foundation. Keep your plants healthy and vigorous. Healthy plants are naturally more resistant. You can also do simple things like just picking bugs off by hand and dropping them in soapy water. Honestly, it's often the most effective method for things like Japanese beetles or tomato hornworms.
Sounds tedious, but effective.
It can be, but it works. Other strategies include planting trap crops to lure pests away from your main crops, choosing resistant varieties in the first place, or actively encouraging beneficial predators like birds, toads, spiders, ladybugs, and lacewings. And crucially, if you want those beneficials to stick around, you cannot use broad-spectrum poisons. They kill the good guys along with the bad. Floating row covers are great for protecting vulnerable young plants from flying insects. Physical barriers like collars around stems can stop cutworms. As a very, very last resort, some organic pesticides derived from plants or minerals exist, like insecticidal soap or neem oil. But Damrosch strongly cautions that even these should be used sparingly, targeted carefully, and never applied when pollinators are active, as they can still harm beneficial insects and disrupt that vital ecosystem balance. Always read the labels, understand the risks, and prioritize safety.
Okay, now plant diseases. These seem like they can be really tough for home gardeners to diagnose accurately, let alone treat effectively. So prevention is the name of the game.
Exactly. Prevention is absolutely paramount with diseases. Start by choosing disease-resistant varieties whenever possible. Breeders work hard on this. And buy your plants or seeds from reputable sources to ensure they're disease-free to begin with. Practice crop rotation, especially in vegetable gardens. Don't plant the same thing in the same spot year after year, as disease organisms can build up in the soil. Avoid working in the garden when the foliage is wet, as this can easily spread fungal spores. Keep plant leaves as dry as possible by watering the soil at the base of the plant, not overhead. Ensure good air circulation by giving plants adequate space. Don't overcrowd them. If you do see signs of disease, remove and destroy the affected plants promptly. Don't just toss them in the compost if you're unsure. Burning them or burying them away from the garden area is safer. And finally, keep a tidy garden. Clean up dead leaves and plant debris at the end of the season, as many pathogens can overwinter on this material.
All right, last hurdle. What about those four-legged or sometimes winged marauders, the wildlife that decides our carefully tended gardens are their personal buffet?
Huh, yes, that's a really common challenge, especially as habitats shrink. The most effective solutions, generally, are either planting things that your local wildlife genuinely doesn't like to eat, or erecting physical barriers. Repellents often have very limited success. For rabbits, things like hardware cloth cylinders around the trunks of young trees, or sturdy rabbit fencing around the whole garden bed, making sure it's buried a few inches or bent outward at the bottom, are effective. Deer. Well, deer can be notoriously difficult. They often require very tall fences, like 6 to 8 feet, or sometimes angled or double fences. Plastic netting can protect shrubs over winter. Movable frames can protect emerging tulips or other tasty bits in spring. For rodents like mice and voles that might gnaw bark or roots, simple snap traps can work. And keeping mulch pulled back a foot or so from tree trunks removes cover for them. Interestingly, moles are often blamed, but they're usually eating grubs, which can actually be beneficial. Birds might go after newly planted seeds or ripe berries. Netting over fruit bushes or floating row covers over strawberries during ripening can help. Or, as Damrosch wisely suggests, sometimes you just plant enough to share.
So, bringing this all together, what does this really mean for us as gardeners? It seems Damrosch is painting a picture where, yes, gardening involves a certain amount of control, but it's also fundamentally about interdependence.
Yeah.
It's about respecting that complex chain of interdependence in nature, recognizing that the soil is truly alive and that toxic substances are just plain harmful to that whole system.
Precisely. Her whole philosophy really leans towards minimal manipulation, avoiding measures that disrupt the natural order unless absolutely necessary. The ultimate goal isn't necessarily a perfect, pest-free, high-yield garden in the conventional sense, but rather a safe, healthy, productive one where the countryside around it is still humming with life. That vitality, she suggests, is actually a large part of the harvest. It encourages this really thoughtful, holistic approach to gardening, one that respects the living system, understands our actions have ripple effects, and ultimately helps create a more sustainable environment, starting right in our own backyards or even on our windowsills.
That's a really beautiful and, frankly, much more satisfying way to think about it. So today we've taken a deep dive into the core principles from the Garden Primer's first chapter. Understanding how plants actually function, the absolute paramount importance of building healthy, living soil, practical ways to feed that soil organically, optimizing light and water, and employing thoughtful, environmentally friendly strategies for dealing with inevitable challenges like weeds, pests, diseases, and wildlife. And this knowledge isn't just about growing nicer tomatoes or prettier flowers. It connects directly to bigger ideas like sustainable living, organic practices, reducing our environmental impact, and maybe fostering a deeper, more fulfilling connection with the natural world right around us.
Which really raises an important question for you, our listener, to ponder. How can you apply these deep insights and practical principles in your own context? Whether you have a small container garden on a balcony, maybe just a few herbs in pots on a windowsill, or a larger backyard plot, how can you become a more mindful and effective steward of your own green space, however big or small it might be?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.